Okay, so I want to say aloha, everyone. Mahalo. Welcome to Lahui Updates. Today is Monday, September 7th. Today's topic is renewable energy on the Department of Hawaiian Homeland and what's in it for Kanaka Maoli. Big question. Okay, so we have like a kind of a big panel today, but everybody has their own expertise and information that they can share to bring light and inform our Lahui more on this issue. So so I'll just have everyone introduce themselves. Just say your name, kind of what you do, and where you're from. Okay, go ahead. We can start with Theresa.
Aloha mai. I'm Theresa Kapaku. I'm a community advocate on Maui. I also did help found a company based in renewable energy and energy efficiency consulting in my professional career. So I'm here to ask questions on the behalf of the community, to learn more and understand about this RFP and how Hawaiians can benefit from it. Also to provide any mana'o that I can from my experience to contribute to the conversation. Mahalo.
Oh, yeah. Mahalo, Theresa. I really appreciate you being on here. Your Facebook has been blowing up with all your community activism. And we also got Julie Cachola, who's here from the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. She's in the planning division. And we're happy to have her here to provide some factual information on the process and what's going on with this request for proposals. However, I just want to make sure that people know that she's not in the decision-making tier.
Yeah,
of the
just slow life.
Yeah.
But I can explain, yeah, I can give information today. Mahalo.
So if you want to share a little bit about yourself, Julie Cachola.
I'm born and raised in Waiʻanae. I'm a planner. I've been working with Hawaiian communities in various capacities. And I don't know how many years I've been in the planning office in Hawaiian Homelands, but for quite some time already. My areas of focus are agriculture and renewable energy. So that's how I'm able to talk about what's happening with this renewable energy proposal.
Great. Thanks, Julie. Thanks for coming on. And Kaukaohu, Wahilani, old friend.
Aloha mai, Lāhui Hawaiʻi, Kaukaohu, Wahilani, anu puʻea mai au. I'm from Puʻea, that's the original name for Waiʻanae Valley. I'm also a homesteader. I also sit on the Waiʻanae neighborhood board. Julie used to sit on a board with us as well. I'm just a very concerned and active community member. So I'm glad that I'm part of this conversation, being a homesteader as well. So mahalo nui.
So you are a lessee in Waiʻanae too, so this will affect you as well. Yeah. And happy to have Chuck Collins. First time I ever met you, Chuck. Thank you for coming on. You can share a little bit about yourself.
Aloha, thank you for having me. My name is Chuck Collins. I've worked in the energy industry for 25 years, specifically for the federal government, U.S. Department of Energy. I've worked a lot with public RFPs, very familiar with how to read through these things, what they mean, what they don't mean. I've developed a lot of renewable energy and energy efficiency projects, and I'm currently working as an advisor to Theresa for her campaign.
Wow. Hey, thanks, Chuck. Wow. You pretty that's an interesting background. Okay, good. We're gonna have a good conversation then. And Germaine, the advocate. Germaine Meyers.
I'm so sorry. I'm having a bad connection. So I'm coming in and out, but are we on introduction, or did you want me to bring up about or did you want me to begin speaking about the energy projects that are on DHHL's plans right now?
We're still on introductions, Germaine.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. My name is Germaine Meyers, and I'm from Nānākuli, Hawaiian Homestead. And so I've been attending DHHL meetings and ʻohana meetings. And when I monitored DHHL, this is what came up in 2018. So that's why I'm here. Just thank you so much, Healani.
Oh, no, thank you, Germaine, for coming on. So Germaine is a Nānākuli lessee. So one of the, in the most recent request for proposals, there's 3 homesteads that are going to be three islands where the Department of Hawaiian Homelands owns land. Hawaii Island, Molokai, and Oahu. And on Oahu, those lands are in Nānākuli. So it's good to have someone from Nānākuli who is a lessee of that community here to discuss this as well. Okay, so kind of wanted to, before we kind of get into the Department of Hawaiian Homeland's request for proposals, wanted to get into where this all came from. So again, the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, it's actually governed by a commission, and those commissioners are appointed by the governor of the state of Hawaii. So knowing our governors, we know what to expect from that. Okay, so and it's also governed by a chair, and that chair is Bill Ila. And so in 2018, and that's what I wanted to share. If Germaine, if you can share about what happened in 2018 at the Department of Hawaiian Homeland's commission meeting. Why are they doing renewable energy projects right now?
Okay, so back in January of 2018, the chairman at that time, Joby Masakatani, she agendized for these so many parcels of land, well, state parcels of land on each of the islands statewide. She proposed to the commissioners, and they had approved a total of 25,651 acres of land to be used for renewable energy. There are 5 parcels of land that she designated for Oahu, 1 parcel of land totaling 1,500 acres on Maui, and she designated 3 parcels.
Okay, I think we lost you, Germaine. Hello? Germaine, I think your connection is not good. Oh, here we go. What's this? Okay. But apologize for that. Germaine, are we still with us? Okay.
So she designated these parcels of land for renewable energy to fulfill the state's mandate or their projection that they wanted to do some renewable energy, so many renewable energy projects by a specific year. And this is just part of that initiative that the state had initiated. So all of these parcels of land, she brought them to the commissioners and had a discussion, had a presentation, and then they approved it. Now, in 2019, some of you may have seen the results of it when KaLahuiHawaiiKomikeKalaiaina, there was a Canadian solar system company that requested 100 acres of land. Well, that came from this initiative that she started back in 2018, Joby Masakatani.
Oh, shoot. So Germaine, still going in and out. So, okay. So basically what Germaine's trying to say is, oh, sorry. We just lost you and then you just came back now, Germaine. Hello? Okay, so Germaine, what she's basically trying to say that in 2018, the Hawaiian Homes Commission, in a meeting that they had, it was agendized. They had actually put aside these lands in Nānākuli, in Ho'olehua, on Molokai, on Hawaii Island for renewable energy projects. Okay, these are lands set aside by the commission. And correct me if I'm wrong, Julie, but the reason why Germaine came across this, I apologize, Germaine, because when you come back on, just feel free to talk. The reason why she found this was, and I was at the hearing at the legislature, when was it? Was 2019, I believe, when Ila was up for reappointment. No, it was 2020, it was actually this year. One of the things the legislature told him that he had to make sure he get the minutes done, because for 10 years, the commission was not publishing their minutes. So when she went back to look at the minutes, she found all this information about their whole shift or their whole investment that they're going to put into Hawaiian home into renewable energies. They are putting aside 25,000 acres. And correct me if I'm wrong, Julie. Is that correct?
Yeah. No,
Yes.
it's not really correct, because it's saying what we did was we looked at all of our available lands and we thought, where could we have renewable energy projects? And so these parcels were identified. But on top of that, we have our land use designations, which are like our zones. And so in those properties, there's like conservation lands, there's residential, homestead lands, or there's other zoned lands that would not be available for renewable energy development. So if you see the RFP or solicitation that goes out, they always say a portion of a certain TMK, because it's not the whole TMK, it's the portion that would be, not conservation, not homestead residential, not actually, it's just boils down to general, the lands that are designated general agriculture. So in a certain parcel, that's only a fraction of whatever the parcel is. So you have to impose the land use designations on top of it. That's how it goes. So it's just a portion of those. So it could be maximum, because you're looking at the total TMK size, just like the last one that went out had 4 parcels, and you add them up and it's 1,030 acres, I think. But if you look at, see this map that's showing right here,
Yeah.
like it wouldn't include, it would only include like the light, I don't know, green area, not the
straight
the
area.
ones with the lines in it. That's conservation land, so you couldn't do it there. The yellow is future homesteading land, so you couldn't do it there. So it's only a very limited part of that parcel that is actually up for potential renewable energy development. That's only if somebody applies for it.
But Julie, isn't it correct that when we had our Oahu regional plan as well as Nānākuli regional plan, that the 448 acres, majority of it is considered general agriculture, and it was being used by Nānākuli Ranch. And when we asked in multiple meetings for us to use it for other than Nānākuli Ranch use, we were always told that you guys were going to come back to us, but you never told us that you were going to use this for renewable energy. So why did it change? Who at the department instigated authority to declare and prioritize these lands for renewable energy projects to recommend to the commissioners?
Yeah, so like I said, so what you saw, that Appendix A, that Exhibit A that you saw in December or January 2019, was a long list. And so we kind of looked through and looked at all of the properties statewide, and we developed a long list. That's what you had over there that you were showing. From there, we developed a shorter list for this new solicitation that only included 4 parcels. But basically, it was just looking at lands that were not slated for homestead development within the next 20 years, that was nearby to, like not switching stations, but substations where they could connect up to, or nearby to high voltage transmission lines that they could connect up to. So not all the parcels, and that they're large enough that they could do something with it, kind of.
Julie, I'm sorry for interrupting, but I think you're confusing the situation where you're speaking as if these renewable projects were endorsed by the beneficiaries by saying that the department had designated these lands, etc. But what I'm asking is, who had the authority to declare and prioritize these lands, and now it's going out for a bid for renewable energy? We never had that discussion. The beneficiaries were never led to believe that, okay, renewable energy was one of the priorities that were going to actually be proposed to the commissioners, because we need these lands for other things, for community use, etc.
Yeah, I agree. And if the community ultimately doesn't want these lands, because what we're gonna do is, now that now we're going to go to these communities and say, okay, this is what happened. This are the priorities that we have identified through the regional plans. When we go and negotiate with these renewable energy developers, is this the priorities that you guys want us to try and negotiate? But if the community comes out and says, hey, we don't even want this before, we don't even want this development here, we'll shut it down at that point. I mean, clearly, we're not gonna, you know, we just thought we'd make this.
Oh, sorry, Julie.
We just thought we'd make this available.
I just wanted to give some context on.
Kaukaohu and myself was in, sorry. Kaukaohu, I don't mean to, I'm just trying to get clarity, but yeah. Kaukaohu and myself was in the Nānākuli Waiʻanae Regional Plan meeting at the Maui Kamemea Schools Learning Center. And not once did this list come to us and say, in January 2018, we're going to take these to the commissioners. Or by the way, we're going to be doing renewable energies. And since it's in Nānākuli, we got 440 acres. We're looking at that. We never was told this. So that's why it's sort of like, after you have a beneficiary consultation, then for us to see this, when we're reviewing minutes or reviewing a packet from a previous year, it gets really challenging for us beneficiaries.
I totally get it. So that's why we are going back to each community. It wasn't our intention to circumvent the community. It's that, and maybe Chuck can help me with this, but HECO's been coming out with these RFPs, and they just kind of like all of a sudden, burst on the scene with these RFPs, and we've got to kind of be in line with them. And our process takes a long time. We're state lands, we have public hearings that are required by law, we do beneficiary consultation. We have a longer process, so we never get ahead of it. So we are always behind the 8 ball on this, and I apologize, but this is, the consequence of that. Having a list to go out to try and get to be a part of this renewable energy gig, so that we can try and get some benefits for our community, so that we can try and get some revenues for the department. And in light of the 100% renewable energy goal that is now at stake, is like, we want to get it, there are going to be more and more developments coming up because the state's going for 100% renewable energy, and HECO's finally bought in. So that changed the whole game. And so we're trying to do this a little bit better. And I apologize for that Exhibit A list coming out. It was one of those things where we had to come up with the list so that we could be a part of that RFP process. So right now we have to go back to our communities. We're taking, it's a bad form. It's a bad format, and I apologize.
So it's just because just for people who don't understand what happened was that Department of Hawaiian Homelands did have these regional planning meetings within the homestead communities, and they were trying to get priorities coming from the community. And what happens is they'll take the top 5 priorities, right? And they'll usually move forward with the top 5 priorities that come out of the community planning meetings. But in these cases, I don't know, Julie, if there was any community where renewable energy was one.
There was some communities that clearly put it, and they even identified the parcels and locations where they wanted to have it. And then we have communities where they actually did the development agreement with the utility in Kauai. It's not part of the HECO gang, but it's separate, is Kauai. And they did a joint solar project that they're going to get a lot of benefit from.
So that was one of the and that's always a concern for us as community people, because we want to make sure that the community was consulted. Look at what happened in Kahuku, right? That was and Kaukaohu, you can speak to that. You were there every single night. How many people were arrested with the windmill project? Do you remember?
206.
Wow.
206 people. And that was a great example of renewable energy, but no consultation with the community, no community input. It was horrific, So of course, that's always a concern. Thank you, Germaine, for bringing that up and these issues. And thank you, Julie, for sharing that. And we, okay, so I wanted to kind of just move on down the agenda to the actual proposal, okay? So the proposal was published, and it's still out, and that's why we had this, that's why we're having this discussion, because we kind of wanted to be on the forefront of the issue and not on the back of the issue where we get 206 people getting arrested at the end.
Correct.
So we want to, and here is the request for proposal that the Department of Hawaiian Homelands put out. And it's for 3 islands, Oahu, Molokai, and Hawaii Island. We're looking at Nānākuli, and it says 448 acres. And then it says,
well, the portion of the TMK, yeah.
oh, okay.
No, but on the RP, it does say 448, Julie. It doesn't say a portion of.
It does say a portion on the TMK.
Oh, yes.
No, not
I
on
know.
the TMK, but on the RFP.
Okay. So it says, then there's the Ho'olehua, 462 acres, 20 acres in Kauai and 100 acres in Kalaua. And Kauai and Kalaua is on Hawaii Island. So yeah, I was a little confused with the RFP because I read some of the other material and it said 20 to 100 acres, and then it's, you know, then it says 448 acres. So not too sure about that. But so that's what kind of brought us to this point where we want to have a discussion now regarding this request for proposals and what's going to happen. Okay, so so Julie, can you walk us through the process of what's going to happen when, so that we can understand, and then I'll have everyone else kind of comment, but feel free to say something if you guys have any comments.
Do this as quickly as possible. First of all, we're going to
Sure.
go out to the community and we're going to say, we start with our regional plans, look at the Waiʻanae and Nānākuli regional plan at your priorities. What we want to know is, are these still priorities? Are there other priorities? Because if and when somebody walks through the door with a renewable energy proposal for Nānākuli, we want to be able to negotiate a community benefits package and want to make sure it's relevant to your current priorities. So that's the first meeting. And that's a meeting, if you guys all come and say, we don't care about priorities, we don't want this development, you know, we can shut it down right there if that's the case. But this is when we're going to go back and explain what this solicitation is trying to hook up in a way with the HECO's RFP that's going to come out. So before they just burst on the scene and they busted it out and we had to respond to it. Now they allowed us to see a draft. And so we could see that they're coming up with the RFP and it's about community-based renewable energy. And we want to explain to the community what that means. What community-based renewable energy is either a solar or wind project that you buy into. And this is going to be for low to moderate income people, that they can buy into the development, and depending on how much you put in is going to be how much you get reduction in your electric bill. So these are for people who don't have a rooftop over their head, or they're renting a house so they can't put solar on their house, or they live in a rental building and they don't have a rooftop so that they can buy in. So this RFP that HECO is going to be putting out is for low to moderate income people that live in buildings without their own roof, that they can't do their own solar, and so it allows them to partake in the you know, investment, and then therefore you get a benefit out of it with lower electric bill. So the process goes like this. So we're going to go out to the community, explain this is what HECO is going to be doing. We want to assess priorities, identify priorities, and then explain that our process is by law is we got to have 2 public hearings on the island where the project is located. And we got to also, for our own internal policy, we do beneficiary consultation. So if somebody walks in and proposes something for Nānākuli, right, we're going to come out and we're going to try and negotiate some benefit package. We're going to come out to the community and say, here's person X. They submitted a proposal for Nānākuli, and this is what they're proposing to give us, okay? This is what they're proposing in terms of rent. This is what they're proposing in terms of benefits for our community. And here's what the project is. And so Mr. X comes and he shows the project and explains what he was gonna do there. And we get input out of that beneficiary consultation meeting. And we'll do that again with 2 public hearings. And at the end of that process, the commission will say, you know what, forget this, or, you know, change the proposal, we want more, you know, they'll negotiate again. But at the end of it, there'll be a commission approval. Now, even if that commission approval goes forth, they still got to compete with HECO process, right? So they still got to compete with all the rest of the places, all the rest of the companies that vie into this HECO RFP. So if they get selected, then they'll be they'll get a right of entry for like 3 years to do the due diligence, and so they got to do an environmental assessment document. That has to be approved by the commission. And at the end of it, if they get through all those hoops and if they get a power purchase agreement from HECO, then they can get a longer term lease. And what we're looking at, longer term meaning like 25-year lease to do their project. So that's a lot of ifs. We have gone through the whole gamut of beneficiary consultation, 2 public hearings many times, and that company not make it through the HECO process, right? So even if it gets through us, it might not get through the HECO process where they're actually getting a power purchase agreement out of the deal, right? So it's still contingent upon that. And then even if that goes through, they still have to get all of their due diligence work done too. So it's like it goes back and forth between our processes and then what's going to happen at HECO. And then, you know, so it's a more difficult process to kind of track because there's so many players involved, you know, but that's kind of like what's going to happen. First, the community meeting to say, let's get it clear what the priorities would be so we can negotiate a better community benefits agreement. And then after that, beneficiary consultation, 2 public hearings, commission decides, and then HECO goes through the HECO process.
Julie or Healani,
Yeah.
can I bring up, okay, so I heard what Julie said, and
Yeah.
what you shared, Julie, when in 2019, in the beginning of last year, when people heard that Aloha, the Canadian company, was bidding on a solar project on DHHL land, people came and protested. And then you went and did what you're just telling me right now. We're going to come back to the community. We're going to do a beneficiary consultation. And then, but you know what ended up happening? I saw it on KITV News for Aloha. People protested about having that 100 acres of land going to offshore. Now it's Canadian money. It's going to go back to Canada. The money is going to go back there. But instead, so it was approved, no matter how much people came out and said they didn't want it, because there was a group of people in Kapolei Association that because they were going to get a benefits package, they had said okay to it. But my point is that you're pitting people that are going to get benefits package, which is like Kapolei Association. They're going to get money from these projects. In the meantime, 100 acres just disappeared, or in Nānākuli, 400 something acres are going to disappear from our inventory. And for 25 years, that association is going to get the money. In the meantime, the people on the wait list, all they're going to get is, okay, less than $1 million each year, $500,000 for a renewable project is going to be given for rent to DHHL for each year for that parcel of land. You can barely even give a loan to someone from the wait list with that much money that is coming in from 100 acres of land. So my point is that when are we going to put emphasis on getting people off of the wait list? And so when we give away the land, we don't have that land anymore. So what is the state going to do when they take 448 acres out of Nānākuli's inventory? Let's say it's the whole thing and not a portion of. Where's that 440 acres going to come from? Why is it that current association and sometimes the lessees don't even see anything because this association is going to handle how the money is spent? So my concern is that we keep giving out our land. This is like 25,000, 1/8 of the 200,000 acres. And nothing is being said by the state like, oh, we'll give you 400 acres over here so that you can give it, it's prime land. You can rent it to your Native Hawaiians who have businesses, who would like to put up commercial businesses or retail businesses. So so OHA, where is OHA in all of this? So that OHA can now, use some of their monies to develop a really good parcel of land that was swapped with DHHL because we're fulfilling the renewable energy for HECO in the state. But that doesn't happen because it goes one meeting, people protest, if people are ignored, it goes to the commissioners who are stacked by the governor, and then they pass it through, and then Allah. All gut is that when association gets money, the people on the wait list, we need money, we're waiting for money, and only pittance of money comes in for 100 acres or 1,000 acres. So that is my concern.
I hear you. I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah.
And I just want to make one really important distinction. We're not proposing renewable energy projects on lands that we would be putting houses on. In Kalailo, it's called karst land. It's got all these sinkholes and everything. We would never put a house over there because it's just that land is just not developable for a home for housing.
No, but in Nānākuli Ranch, we have people living there, caretaking the land. We've had parties over there, so we could put a community center over there.
And we would not be putting that area is conservation on the bottom part, so that's not where the renewable energy project would occur. If you look at the island plan, it would only be the general agriculture areas. And if you look at
the general agriculture, you mean to tell me that Native Hawaiians cannot use it to put kukui nut trees to grow for ina mona? You cannot grow hala trees in order to make hala.
You can.
Etc.
Of course you can. I'm just saying that it's not conducive for homestead development. That's all.
So what I'm saying is that we never had these types of discussion because when we had the Nānākuli regional plan meeting, we were told, that parcel of land, 448 acres, is being used by Nānākuli ranches on an agriculture general lease. And right now it's in a lease format. Never came back to us and said, now we're looking at using it in other ways instead of general agriculture. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I totally do, and I apologize for that. We will be coming out, and you can tell us.
Get rid of Bill Ila.
I'm sorry.
That's my opinion here. I can't stand that guy.
I just want to make the point that when we take inventory, whether it's conservative or whatever, general agriculture, when we take land and we give it to fulfill a state initiative like renewable energy, land should be coming back to us that we can use for Native Hawaiians with mercantile, Native Hawaiians who need commercial, who are trying to get businesses started and or agriculture use, etc. Instead, we're just left with benefits package. Let's go with benefits package. And so that we can have the state satisfy their quota for renewable energy. And then this association that lives nearby is going to get approved. And I'm sorry, that's not a formula that works for us because we need to get people off of the wait list. And we need people that are lessees to have avenues of having their businesses having land to use for their businesses, and so that they can generate income for their families from their business revenue and pay their leases and thrive. But instead, we're not doing that. We're doing a whole totally different game plan and following somebody else's playbook. And we never get an opportunity for the beneficiaries to give feedback with the playbook. Because Julie, you have to agree that I went to all of the Oahu island-wide plan, every one of them, in Papakolea, in Waimanalo, in Kapolei, in Maili. I went to every one of them to hear how the department is bringing the Oahu island-wide plan to us. And every one of them was different. One, you had boards up, another one, but none of them had enough time for the beneficiaries to give back and then to hear that you guys heard us Instead, you put it in a 400-something page report, and nobody gets a copy of it so that they can look through it. Instead, our kupunas are told, download it on the computer from DHHL's website. And how can they do that? How can they know that what they said was heard when you just steamroll through us? And that kinds of beneficiary consultation gotta stop, Julie.
Mhm.
It's hard.
Well, I think you know, and I don't want to be bashing Julie.
No, I know.
It's
No,
just
I
that,
understand. Well, I mean,
really, the priorities come from the commission, and that's where all the decisions are made. I mean,
no, it comes from the chairman. The chairman proposes
and we
priorities
all
to the
oppose
commission.
his a reappointment. So we did what we could, and then okay. So, and I think we can all agree that that there wasn't a rigorous enough beneficiary consultation that went on. We can all agree to that. Okay.
So, and it's not over. And it's not over.
It's not over, as Julie said. You know, and I want to mahalo Julie. Julie, I didn't mean for this to be like,
oh, it's okay.
It's Julie, whatever.
I totally get it.
I'm sorry, Healani. I was just trying to bring up the facts, and unfortunately, the facts are hard to digest.
And
it's
systemic with the whole issue with the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. It's been going on for 100 years. This whole
thing.
Hard.
It's hard. We try our best
on the waiting list. And I'm just thank Julie for actually bringing us some infos, and thank you, Germaine, for bringing up because your voice is very important, Germaine, as a community member that's going to be directly affected by this project. And just hearing what Germaine is saying, it's very clear. There's frustration there. There is frustration, you know. And again, we don't want to have a situation like what happened with Kahuku. So I want to kind of move on to Theresa and Chuck and kind of get their input as people who have actually worked in the renewable industry business on what, I mean, how does this look? Is this, I mean, because I know that the state plans to be 100% renewable energy, right? And that's kind of like their goal by 2045. And so, like, what is, I mean, are we on the right path? What is Nānākuli?
I just wanted to start by saying thank you to Julie for being here on Labor Day. It's taking time away from your ʻohana to be here with us and to talk about this very sensitive issue. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate your patience. From what I hear, I definitely agree that there is an underlying layer of frustration. And I think that carries over into a lot of different Hawaiian issues, not just renewable energy, but food security, protection of our resources, et cetera. But there's definitely some good points being made. And I want to say that I think that we start to begin to solve that problem with Zoom meetings like this. When folks are all together, we're sharing our mana'o, we're speaking loudly, and we're doing it in a public forum so that other people can get engaged instead of just communities having these meetings in their own ahupua'as. We're having this now on a, the scale of the ʻāina, and now everybody who's had experiences with the renewable energy projects in their various locations, like here on Maui. I think that that's really valuable for us to share those experiences like Tita Germaine is going through right now on Oahu. I also wanted to mention that I grew up in Nānākuli homesteads. I forgot to bring that up, but I'm a third road baby. We're a couple of yeah. So it's a very near and dear place to us, which is another reason why we wanted to engage on this specific topic. A couple questions, a couple things I wanted to bring up real quick before I hand it over to Chuck, because Chuck is really akamai at explaining how this goes in a process from like the utility standpoint and such. But in this particular case, I just wanted to bring up a couple things. One of those is about the type of projects. So when we talk about solar versus wind, I find that those two are very, very different creatures, and having a wind turbine, depending on where it's located, could be very dangerous and harmful to our communities, like Kahuku. Whereas, something like solar might not be so invasive. So I wanted to talk about the type of projects that are being allowed not just renewable energy as a whole, like for instance, geothermal, and what we have to do to get geothermal into the ground. That's a pretty big deal. So I would say that the community sounds to me like the community would probably be more or less in opposition if it wasn't such an ominous project like the Kahuku windmills. And then also too with the type of land. So being that in this area in Nānākuli, we were stating that it's not home, a type of property that we would put homes. I personally live in an area where I think that plenty of people would think that you cannot live over here. We live completely off grid in the bushes, but we survive and we love it. So I wonder about that determination about what type of land is livable and what type of land is not livable, because that might be something that, different people are willing to, put their hales on, or if they wanted to create a farm in that area. Lastly was, hearing us talk about that this is agricultural land, and essentially we're putting solar farms or wind farms on agricultural land. But with the dire need for food security right now, with 90% of our food being imported in this whole COVID thing, I think that we're also in a transition of time. Whereas in times when feel like we're thriving more, or there's a sensation that we're thriving more, we might, I'm not going to speak for Germaine because it sounds like she's been, on this thing the whole time. But for folks like me, coming from a not in such an intimate perspective, the thought seems to me like maybe we should adjust our priorities now instead of pre-COVID, and maybe start looking at that as a starting point again, instead of sort of, huli everything over into the next into this part of our journey in Hawaii during pandemic. So mahalo for listening. Those were my 3 main points I wanted to bring up over that listening to you folks. Maybe we can address them later, but for folks that are watching, maybe we just want to make some notations. And again, mahalo for the opportunity, for the engagement with the community getting involved. This is the start of transformational change, I believe. So mahalo for that, and I'll pass it over to Chuck.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, thanks for the opportunity to talk about this topic. Anytime you converge priorities of land, those priorities change, obviously, depending on political or whatever priorities we have at the time. I grew up on Maui, but the Department of Energy office I worked out of was on the West Coast. And I saw, and this has been, 15, 20 years in the making. I've seen a lot of developers early on, renewable energy developers, wind in particular, go after Bureau of Land Management lands, Native American lands, things like that, that were really, quote, empty, barren, not livable, those types of things, because they make for cheap access to renewable energy projects, and a lot of these companies are, based on dollars and cents, and they're looking, land access is one of the parts of their equation, right? So, so I've seen this issue a lot over the years. This particular issue is super delicate because of the confined space that we're dealing with. Not only the fact that technology changes so quickly, what is solar in 25 years? I mean, I totally agree with Germaine's, statement that 25 years is a long time, and you're locking up land based on priorities today, whether, whatever those priorities are based on, they're still based on today's logic and reasoning. I have a science degree from the University of Washington in Seattle. Half of the things that I learned in college are irrelevant today. And that's because science has changed so much, and that's not even 25 years ago, right? So who knows, again, what solar is going to be in 25 years, and I would hate to see, us go in and lock up good land with today's technology, taking up acreage with today's technology, only for in 10 years to go in and say, well, solar panels have evolved so quickly, let's go in and swap them out. Because every time you go in and you mess with, conservation land, and if it's not buildable for houses or whatever, then it's livable for something, you know, ecosystem wise, right? And every time you go in and mess with it, there's ecological problems. We have a large solar array that was going in down the road here in Maui. And it was in the backyard of a big neighborhood, and there, you know, a lot of people came out against it, not because there's not anything there, but because there are things there. There's birds there. There's a whole ecosystem that lives there. So while we may not see it as a priority, is it worth giving up? You know, is it worth really producing power for those types of things? Physics is cool. You can do a lot with it. That doesn't mean you have to take up barren land to produce power with it. You know, I think again, really as an ending point, I'll wrap up here, but as an ending point, what you'll mostly see is solar plus battery storage. That's the cheapest type of product going out right now. You may see wind turbines. It's really hard to say. You know, foothills wind projects are tough because of the migration of birds these days, but so you'll most likely see a solar project. And where are these electrons going? These green electrons that are being produced in this conservation area. Are they going to the homes to power the homes? Most likely not. They're most likely traveling the grid to some of the larger resorts. So, you know, just again, think about what's really happening with this land once you develop it, and just really make sure that that's the direction you want to go with this land. And if it is, so be it, if that's what the community believes. And I love the process that's been set up for community engagement, that they are going to go back to the community. I think it would be a huge misstep if they miss that and they don't have plans to go back to the community. But you know, there's opportunities.
I'm in a
along the way to
meeting.
change this. So anyway,
Okay.
that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Chuck. So Chuck, how fast is, like, for example, the solar industry changing? Because I know solar panels have a certain life, right? And you got to change them every few years, kind of thing. I mean, because if you're thinking 25 years down the road, how many solar panels would we need to, like, actually make money from it? You know, I mean, because when you look at the RFP there and some of the notes, they're saying that, you know, this is a way for them to actually generate money so they can build homes for Hawaiian homesteaders or people on the wait list. So how much money can you actually make from these kinds of businesses on Hawaiian
which end of it? Depends on which end of it you're on. If you're the developer, then you're the one cutting checks, and you're going to be cutting a check to DHHS for not only the fee that's required up front, or the fees, I should say, that are required up front for the leasing of the land, but then the long-term leasing of land that's required to do that. You basically pocket the rest as the developer once you're free with the utility interconnections, your land leases, your permits, your construction, those types of things. So how much can be made? Well, it's really, you know, it's up to the developer how much they can cut those costs, and cutting land costs is a great way to do that. So how the money flows back, however, you know, part of the question I think you're asking is, how does the money flow back through DHHS back to you know, the people that live on those lands? I'm not entirely sure how that process will happen. I think that's up to the group and DHHS to decide.
Okay, because I
will get money for the renting of the land and the leasing of the land. They will be getting money for that, and you know, Hawaiian Electric will be paying out. There's a bunch of parties that are going to be involved in this. How the dollars flow to people, that's a different story sometimes.
Can you give us an idea, Julie, how much money we're looking at in terms of how much we're going to benefit from this?
I don't know. There are other deals that we made in the past. Like Kaikinui had a wind project, and I'm so bad with my memory. I can't even quote.
Okay. I just kind of want to get an idea.
But
like,
there have been examples, and that would be it would go to build new homes, basically. You know, it's for new homestead development. That's the priority of the administration, is new homestead development. It's revenue generation.
Somebody texted me a question about the priority for Native Hawaiians. So when it comes to this proposed project, what's the priority to Native Hawaiian owned companies that submit proposals?
They get extra points in the process of selection.
So, okay, there's no preference then.
You know, we evaluate the whole proposal. There's different kind of criteria that is included in that RFP. So they gotta meet those requirements as well. But you know, if you're gonna put, if there's a viable proposal to me with a Hawaiian, native Hawaiian component, and a viable proposal, you know, non-native, it would go to the native Hawaiian, you know. So it's just a matter of looking at the whole proposal to see if they've checked all the boxes and they meet all the criteria.
Great. Oh, yeah, Theresa.
Healani, so real quick, so I've been involved with some of the RFP work with other municipalities, and one of the things I noticed is that the smaller businesses have a harder time competing with a lot of the larger businesses that have access to millions of dollars of credit, who have already deep pockets and networks of people who are ready to capitalize on an investment. That's what this is for these folks. This is investments. I understand that you know, even some of these development agencies use renewable energy projects like this to fuel and fund pensions, retirements for you know, there's a whole other world that's going on here. And for a Hawaiian to think or assume that that the points that are slanted in their favor are going to give them the upper hand, the answer I would say is to maka'ala that. And that the only real way that the minority and the average, you know, let's say for instance, Nānākuli Solar, okay, brother lives on 3rd Road. He's trying to make up a company for him and his wife and his kids. When he purchases his supplies and he starts looking at what to pay his employees, he usually, these types of people don't usually survive the gamut of the RFP process. So if there is going to be some type of measure that's going to help favor Hawaiians, especially on DHHL property, I would say that it might have to be on the level of like affirmative action, something that hails down from our government that says we need to help the native Hawaiian, Kanaka Maoli community to survive, not just survive and get beans, but to thrive. Because these people, when they're making these contracts, there is a lot of money here. One of these contracts would change a Kanaka Maoli's life forever. So, you know, especially when we're talking about energy projects on this scale. So when we talk about competitiveness with our small businesses, we really got to look at some bigger moves, some bigger actions than just a few points on a
I agree. And it's not just us, as you know, it's HECO, right? So it's like we should be lobbying HECO to say, hey, give some extra, you know, some chance for the local businesses to succeed in this. They're ultimately the ones that will choose who gets to go through, you know, to the end, not us. You know,
a question: how many jobs do you think? Because I'm thinking about the request for proposal in Ho'olehua and Molokai. One of the big issues on Molokai is always jobs, and so how many jobs would an industry like this actually generate? I don't know. Anybody?
I think one project maybe upwards of 200 people. It depends on what type of project is being used. But you know, a solar project, you'd have a fair amount of installers and equipment suppliers along the way, and again, because the companies would probably be a little bit bigger than a smaller company, you do have some admin pull that has to happen from some of the companies. So you know, upwards most 200 in one project, and that's probably overestimating.
And what about the unions? Do they have any role in this, or is there any?
That's a good question.
You know, it's tough in this climate because the electric utility companies are looking for lowest cost product. Because
when it comes to Hawaiian homelands, I want to share with people that there's no the restrictions on Hawaiian homelands is actually less than state lands, right? Like you don't need a permit to build technically on Hawaiian homelands, right? Isn't that correct?
You kind of do. I mean, when it comes to health and safety, we're bound by the same permits. Where we get the leeway is in the zoning of our lands. So they don't have to go through the State Land Use Commission or the planning commissions because we can zone our own lands. But in terms of health and safety and stuff like that, I mean, we still have to adhere to those things. We have to do still an environmental assessment, you know, and it has to assess all this environmental and social, economic, and cultural impacts. That still has to be done. So when it comes, I think generally speaking, when it comes to health and safety, that's when they draw the line.
Yeah, and the land commission is a big one. If you don't have to deal with them, that's a big, you know, and I'm just saying, like, in terms of why a company would want to build on Hawaiian homelands.
We do circumvent that part, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to kind of talk about what, maybe have Kaukaohu share a little bit, you know, in your community right now, Kaukaohu. So in the Waiʻanae larger area of Nānākuli, you already have an electrical plant. You got a landfill. You got a sewage plant. And so, you know, this just kind of, yeah, it's so kind of like a social justice issue. I mean, anything that people in Kahala don't want in their backyard ends up in Waiʻanae.
I totally agree with you on that. You know, like you said, we get the biggest electric power station at Kahe Point. We have the municipal landfill, which is in Waimanala Gulch, which is in our moku, and it's full to capacity. We have the only PVT landfill that takes on industrial and construction waste. We have in Waiʻanae, as you enter into Waiʻanae, we have a wastewater treatment center. And to my understanding, from when I was a kid, we come in and you smelling sewage coming into Waiʻanae. And I was in a meeting with Auntie Puanani Burgess a couple years ago, and she was livid about the fact that the Waiʻanae wastewater treatment, the city and county was supposed to implement this plan that that the smell would be at its minimum, but it never got completed, and she was very livid about that. So we got that, and we also have a 600-acre solar farm right in the back of right on the bottom of Waiʻanae Valley, you know, where the old landfill was, you know. So we got all these things out on, you know, mine and Germaine's and Julie's moku, you know, and this seems to be the norm out here, and our people are getting, you know, for the most part, a lot of community members are getting very, you know, upset about it, you know, and rightly so. So, you know, so with these things going on, it really, you know, and then you add on everything else with, you know, with the houselessness and everything else that's impacting on the Waiʻanae coast. It's a lot to bear. It's a lot to carry. So, and you know, and especially out in Makua and all of that. So I'm afraid that if the legislation or the powers that be, city and county, whether city, county, and state, doesn't really address these issues, and even for DHHL, that, you know, things can just pop off, and that's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting you said it's a lot to bear. It is a lot to bear in the community because the Waiʻanae community is the largest Kanaka Maoli community in the world. Again, it's the largest Kanaka Maoli community in the world. And they have more than their fair share of sewage. They even got toxic waste in Lualuale that has been tied to, I mean, they did studies on people that live in that valley, and there's like a high number of cancer.
Yep, and that'll be with the military.
Yeah, that's the military. I mean, you name it, Waiʻanae got it. And so I think this is like something of concern for us because, again, another project on Hawaiian lands, and it's clear from what Germaine had shared that there was no proper consultation with the community, or it wasn't even a priority of your community, I believe. But and I'm not putting the blame on any particular person. I think DHHL as a whole, we need to, I mean, there's always been issues about the commissioners being appointed by the governor. There's been bills in the ledge asking for us to actually elect the commissioners. And of course, the chair of Department of Hawaiian Homelands is appointed by the governor. So pretty much DHHL is under the thumb of the governor. They don't even have, the Department of Hawaiian Homelands doesn't even have their own attorney, separate and apart from the state. They have to go through the attorney general, which is also problematic, and it's a conflict of interest a lot of times. So, and I just kind of wanted to roll back to the point that what the purpose of the Department of Hawaiian Homelands is, and this is straight from the RFP. So the Department of Hawaiian Homelands is an executive agency of the state of Hawaii, okay, carrying out the purpose of the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act of 1920. So we're in the 100th anniversary year of the Hawaiian Homes being created, to rehabilitate the lives of Native Hawaiians. DHHL, under the control of its executive board, known as the Hawaiian Homes Commission. It was given 200,000 acres. The Department of Hawaiian Homelands may lease lands it deems are not required for homestead leasing under Section 207. DHHL may lease those available lands to the public, including Native Hawaiians, on the same terms applicable to the disposition of the public lands. Right now, we got 28,000 people on the homestead list, waiting list. And if you think about in Nānākuli and Waiʻanae, the average number of people living in their homes is 10 people. So if you times 28,000 by 10 people, that's how much people you're going to provide housing for if you actually attack the list. I mean, Germaine had made a good point. I mean, the priorities of the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, as laid out by the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act, is to rehabilitate and to put Hawaiians on lands, put them in housing. Is there anything else you guys wanted to share? Because we're kind of almost we're pretty much out of time, but we can go around. And Germaine, if you want to, I wanted to ask you one last question, Julie. What's up with the Kalailoa project? What's the update on that?
You know, I don't know if they got their PPA or not. I know that they've been working with the community really closely, and the community, the homestead community, as Germaine has pointed out, has supported the project because they have been, that Interjex project. But I don't know where they are with the HECO process. HECO, does its own thing, and we kind of hear about it afterwards, just like everybody else. Mm-hmm. So this one got the nod from our commission to go ahead. They submitted a proposal to HECO, and I guess they're waiting. They're still in the short list, I guess, so they're still alive. They haven't been vetted out of that process. So it's still an ongoing thing, and we'll just wait to hear whenever they either get kicked out of it or they puka through.
How many acres is that?
I don't know their footprint. Maybe if you scroll down some more, whoever's looking,
no, it says approximately 100 acres. Okay.
Yeah. But I think the whole thing is the whole thing 100, or the whole thing might be 140 acres. What happened over there is they found a whole bunch of revetments, like these old World War II, I think they're big concrete structures that they can't use. So they wanted to get rid of they wanted to extract the land that those things were on from their deal. And so I think that they tried to come in to renegotiate. I'm not sure exactly where that ended up, but they're saying they can't use those lands. So they didn't want to, they want to take it out of their project so that they're not liable for rent for that land. So I'm sorry, I don't have more updated information, but it kind of, once it goes out of our hands, it goes into HECO's process, and it's really kind of out of our hands, until, they come back for, say, an environmental assessment, then we have to be the one that approves that.
Thank you. Okay, so basically, if everybody can kind of, talk to the what now. I mean, what are we gonna do now? Now that we know this is out there, that there is, the deadline is October 16th, I believe,
Yeah, I think so.
to submit your proposal.
So so we'll come out before then, to do this first meeting with the community to see what the priorities are so that we can better negotiate a community benefits package. And if at that meeting the community shuts us down, then it won't go any further, So you'll hear from us, and I'll make sure that you folks know.
So will
when
we
that
hear from you guys before October 16th or after?
Before October 16th, we want to come up.
We'll have a chance to actually say, no, we don't want this at all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So October 16th. And so how will we find out when community members can actually come out and say something?
We'll probably send a notice to all of the beneficiaries in the 96792, in the Waiʻanae region. So that's going to be applicants and lessees. But I'll let you folks know too.
Okay. Thank you, Julie. Thanks for coming on.
Okay.
So, I just wanted to kind of go around, if everybody can just kind of share some mana'o. I mean, what do you think as Kanaka Maoli we can do now? I mean, it seems that the state, this is a big initiative by the state, and HECO is going to come out with a huge RFP asking for people to, submit proposals. Department of Hawaiian Homelands is trying to get ahead of the game, right, by doing what you're doing. So, Chuck, any advice to Kanaka Maoli people and ʻohana and homesteaders out there?
The burning question for me is there already a power plant at that wastewater plant? Are they already taking the methane and burning power off of it? Because it doesn't sound like they are. And if they aren't, then that needs to be a first priority. Wastewater plants can actually be assets in a community as far as power production and clean water. And if they're not being used that way, they're actually a liability in the community. And that's just been a burning question ever since brought it up about the fact that, you have these things here. I just wanted to know. And I'm going to look that up as soon as I get off this call and see if there's already a power plant there. But, I'd say, the only advice I have is if the community doesn't want this, then don't make it happen. It follows the track of many other power plant productions over the last 100 years. They tend to put these things in places where people aren't, and then they connect these little things called wires to where the people are, and they send this stuff over the wires to where the people are. And this has been a pattern over the last 100 years. Technology's gotten to the point where we can do cooler things less far away now, but it still, again, tracks a similar train of thought. And what's the power for? It's for the buildings. So why not put it on the buildings and just be done with it? That's my final thought. Thanks for the opportunity today.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck, for your mana'o. It's good to have different perspectives. And Kaukaohu, any mana'o on what we should be doing as Kanaka?
Yeah, I got some mana'o, but before I can do that, Healani, sure. We have some questions from the community members. They're asking if we can answer some of those. And Charlotte Boy, who's the chair for our Waiʻanae neighborhood board, and she's also a homesteader with me. She had asked some questions. So can you read out those questions, sister, since we got Chuck and
is that Char? Okay, good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so Char, what she had shared was priority should be for the community homesteads regarding these projects, and that we did kind of bring that up. I would like these kinds of projects, this is from Char from Waiʻanae. I would like it that these kinds of projects are required to partner with collaborative partnership with the Homestead Association. And that's actually a really good idea. But Germaine also brings up issues about how much is the community actually benefiting from some of these associations, because we're going to Nānākuli got two, right? Beneficiary consultation should happen also during the time when a company is vetted, which is what Julie had shared, that there will be two, as mandated by law, consultations with the community. But before it even goes further, we will, as the Nānākuli and Waiʻanae community, have an opportunity to say something about this. Smaller projects so that the general lease are given to Native Hawaiian and Native Hawaiian owned businesses. And I like that idea actually, because it's the same thing with the farming issue with that whole Kamehameha schools, 400 acre, no, it was 229 acres, $4 million, 4 years. The project went kaput. Why? They was trying to start too big. They should have done piecemeal, had the community, work with the community. Always got to start with the community and with the layout of the people. Regarding development exploration series as a capacity building and resiliency plans, I have more, but this is good for now. Thanks, Shar, for that. Yeah, did you know Shar, Julie?
Yeah, I was gonna say she can always call. How's it?
Okay. But this is good. This is coming from a community leader in Waiʻanae. She also said no project should be approved until there is a disposal plan. That's actually a really great point. Site and process for all the equipment, parts, and materials. Will there be a requirement for this? A disposal plan?
Yeah, there is that. And I think it's in the RFP too, but it definitely be in the land lease that goes out, if it goes out. Yeah. They have to remove everything and return the land. Thank
you. That's kind of like what we're going through with the decommissioning of the telescopes, right? Okay, for panels projects, incorporate other farming methods, aquaponics, hydroponics so there needs to be partnerships so the corporation doesn't have sole site control. That's actually, my gosh, that's really a great idea. You know, there has to be more innovative ways to approach renewable energy. And even, I mean, that would be a interesting thing to look at, incorporating hydroponics and aquaponics and farming methods. Require all generation also attributed credited to homesteaders to figure it out. If corporations don't want to do this, then our land should not be messed with. Good. Yeah, it's just from what we hear from, you know, Kaukaohu and Germaine, it doesn't seem that this is a project that the community wants. We haven't heard from Molokai yet about what they want. Molokai is very different, you know. They're very sensitive about keeping jobs on and getting jobs on that island. But anything else you want to share, Kaukaohu?
I can ask one question, Healani. Yeah. This is for Julie, ACES. So I know you were sharing earlier that if the community doesn't want this project, then it's just not going to go through. But I like what Germaine also said earlier about Nānākuli Ranch, that the properties that was going to be vetted for this, if it does go through, if it doesn't, that we can use that properties for growing like ulu or growing hala, you know, hala and what, is that a possibility, Julie?
You know, when we have this meeting, when we're coming out to confirm community priorities, that's when you guys should talk about this and bring this up, you know, and just say, this is our priority for this area, and put it on the table, you know, and have it be a community driven project that way. That would work.
Yeah.
Because other than that, we just have the ranch, you know, so we need an alternative to that.
Okay, thanks, Julie. I have one last question. So like we have our lo'i patches up Ka'ala farms, right? And so the 200 something acres that produces the me'ai of Ka'ala farms is under DHHL. So Uncle Eric Enoston said they have an agreement with DHHL.
We have 100 acres, yeah.
100 acres. So
yeah.
Is there a possibility that because Uncle Eric Ka'ala Farms has the agreement, is DHHL open to other identities, maybe like for us, Waiʻanae Valley Homestead, that we could manage some of those lands too, to, you know, is that a possibility too?
I mean, this is what we've been looking at actually for a while, and I don't know how that would be configured or how we can work that out, where you guys are comfortable working, or how that works out with Ka'ala Farm. You know, they have been managing those lands for a while now, and so it's a matter of you know, working together and coming up with a viable proposal. You know, to me, it's the backyard of the homestead, so that has, you know, you need to have access. And I've talked with Eric about this many a time.
Great. Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So, and I know that Department of Hawaiian Homelands, they do lease out I mean, you can apply for, to manage lands on certain of their lands. And yeah,
The bottom line is you got a good idea, propose it, right? We have this land use request form. It's on our website. Fill it out. It's an easy form. It says where you want, what you want, who you are, and throw it in the hopper, and that is all subject to consultation. We'll take it out and say, hey, we got 5 proposals in the back of Waiʻanae Valley. What do you guys think? And that won't go to everybody. That'll just go to Waiʻanae people to ask them. It'll be a more contained consultation. But to me, is you got an idea, propose it. That's the main thing.
Wonderful. Good questions, Kaukaohu.
Mahalo, Julie. Mahalo, Healani.
Yeah.
Okay, so Julie, you want to share anything?
I just want to apologize. I want to apologize that Exhibit A list wasn't vetted properly. That we're rushing and trying to get in on this renewable energy development, thinking that we could get benefits for our community and revenues for the department to build more houses. And I think, I've said this before to the department that I think we should take that list out for consultation just in and of itself, right? Regardless, we don't need a project. We just go out and say, we've identified these parcels of land. What do you guys think? And I'm gonna go back and suggest the same thing again, and underscore this conversation as another reason why I think that we need to do this. It's the proper way to do this. So I have to apologize, that wasn't done in the first instance. But I can guarantee you that we will be coming back to this community. I'll let you folks know when that's happening, to assess priorities for this community. And if this is not a priority, then I can also guarantee that this will be shut down.
Great, thank you, Julie. And we'll try to get the word out too when that hearing comes out, so the community can share their mana'o. Germaine, did you want to share anything else, or you have any questions? We're just kind of wrapping up.
No, I've been listening to everybody. So I first of all want to thank you, Healani, for putting this forum together.
Yeah.
I want to thank Julie for coming for DHHL so that we can get answers as we go along the way. And then Theresa, Chuck, and Kaukaohu, I have been listening to everyone. I think everyone's heart is to, for the wait listers, for us to be having conversations in a more proper way. And so I just appreciate everybody's feedback and just thank you. Thank you. Mahalo.
Yeah.
Hello, Germaine. Thanks for all your research, Germaine, and being such a good advocate at the commission level. I mean, she's gone through the minutes and tried to hold the commission accountable. And I think we really do need people like Germaine out there that will hold these guys accountable. Theresa, you have any mana'o and last words you wanted to share or questions?
Yes, mahalo, Healani, so much for all your efforts to put this together and facilitate this very important discussion. I'm so grateful that we all have this technology platform, that we can be here from all these different locations, and to be able to have this discussion where thousands of people are watching and being educated. Very powerful, so mahalo. A couple of things I wanted to say is that I just really want to make sure that this project is not a wind project. I think wind projects are pretty well at like almost a taboo at this point. Like, we just want to kapu wind altogether especially in area. I mean, I would say personally altogether, but specifically in areas where there's residents, children, schools, communities nearby. So I would just encourage the community to come out and really say that out loud. No wind, ʻaʻole wind, here in Waiʻanae. In addition to that, I wanted to say that if we are going to be, if homesteaders are going to be going into this in a capacity of negotiation, that I want to kahea the Waiʻanae community to really get involved. People that don't normally get involved, I'm asking you to get involved. Kako'o, your community leaders, we need as many voices as possible. The days of just you know, cruising homesteads and just kind of watching everything go by. I think that those days are over, and it's really time for everybody to get engaged and for everybody's voices to be heard. So please, you watching this video today, please activate yourself, activate your communities, and help Kaukaohu, help Germaine, because every voice matters, every comment, every question, all of those things helps us to, you know, to malama this thing as much as possible. I definitely agree with Chuck in terms of utilizing existing power sources. So again, if the wastewater plant is already putting out waste heat and we're not utilizing that,
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
let's get on it. I would also recommend everybody to go to Chuck. He's a very easy person to talk to. He speaks in our language. So if you need a little bit of guidance, he's with Valley Consulting. Just send him an email, contact him, I'm sure, or contact Healani. We can get you guys all the information that you need so that you can get a little bit more insight. So think of him like a tool for you, yeah? And that's like no cost, of course. There's no agenda here. It's just malama kekahi, yeah? So rooftops, things that are already generating power, you know, why do we have to take up all this ʻāina that we can normally grow food when there's already so many buildings that already have this structure? And so let's look at what our existing opportunities are before we start developing, yeah? So mahalo to everybody for spending your Labor Day and your energies talking about this. It's going to be more of a concern as we move forward in the years, because energy is going to be a more and more and more pressing issue, how we're going to do it cleanly, etc. So maybe the native, the Kanaka Maoli community, maybe it's time to start looking at how you can capitalize as a business owner. You know, maybe you're a sheet metal worker, maybe you're a tradesman, maybe you're coming out of the tourism industry and you're looking for another type of way to feed your family. Well, energy is a great way to do it, as long as we do it in a pono method, that we ulu pono through the whole thing, from conception, which is the idea, like she said, come up with a good proposal and submit it. So it's time, I think, for us to realize that there's a huge opportunity here if we can do it the right way as a community, because renewable energy is a good thing. We are paying 5 times more than the rest of the nation is paying. A lot of the rest of the nation is paying for energy. And we do need to start looking at other ways outside of coal, fossil fuels, our dependence on the oil industry, the barges, etc. So there is an element to this that is very concerning, like the use of land, but there's also an opportunity here. So how can we, as Kanaka Maoli, rise up? Because this is it's a good line of work. It's well paying, it's stable. It's the future is about how are we going to generate energy and do it cleanly. So that's my kahea for everyone, and mahalo to mahalo kako, everybody, for your time.
Mahalo everyone. Mahalo everyone for engaging in this conversation, and for everyone watching. Such an important, and so there will be updates, and so check our Facebook page at KaLahuiHawaiiKomikeKalaiaina Facebook page. We will update you folks when that notice comes out for community input on the projects. Aloha, aloha, everyone.
Healani. Mahalo, thanks.
Mahalo.
Oh no.
Hey, Theresa, can I get Chuck's number?
Yeah.